Tell me if you've heard this one. A group of wealthy English travelers embark on a fairly routine voyage. Their ship is the biggest and fastest around, and as such, they are full of confidence that they will reach their destination safely the next day. They party hard and enjoy themselves, but seemingly out of nowhere, the ship collides with an unseen obstacle, and, after a short struggle, the ship sinks, taking most of those once confident travelers with it. Thanks to the thumbnail and the familiarity of its story in pop culture, you were probably thinking of the Titanic, or scrambling to think of something else because these openings always seem to have a trick question. And those facts do indeed match the Titanic story. But what if the sinking of the Titanic, tragic as it was, did not contain its tragedy to those who drowned and their loved ones? What if the loss of the Titanic shook England so hard it caused a war? Well, the Titanic didn't do this, but another ship did. 8 centuries before, on an icy evening in the English Channel, a ship carrying the flower of English leadership suddenly sank, sinking their country into a 15-year civil war. This is the story of the White Ship disaster. In the year 1066, Norman knights from the north of what is now France conquered England, joining together the two realms into a single holding that straddled the English Channel. The successors of William the Conqueror tried to keep these two lands together, with varying success. But at last, after a victorious war against the jealous King of France, Henry I secured peace in the Anglo-Norman realm. All that was left to do was return to England and enjoy the fruits of his long and active reign. The main port on the Norman side of the Channel used for crossings in those days was Barfleur, and it was there that the Anglo-Norman court gathered. All of Henry's great magnates were present, for they had joined him in fighting the French and were now planning on going home together for a celebration. Most important of these was Henry's son and heir, William Aetherling. All Henry's life had been dedicated to creating a stable realm to be passed on to his son, so that his dynasty may continue in prosperity. At Barfleur, a ship's captain named Thomas Fitzstephen approached Henry and offered up his magnificent ship for the king's triumphant crossing. Named the White Ship for its lightly hued planking, it was the best ship in the region, and the fastest too, made of the most modern construction. This sound familiar at all? Henry, though, had already made other arrangements, but allowed his son and his friends to travel aboard the luxurious White Ship for their crossing. Henry's ship left first with the evening tide, expecting the White Ship to overtake his vessel in the night, where they could all meet again in England. Back on the White Ship, the Prince, William Aetherling, obliged the starstruck crew by ordering great casks of wine to be brought in from Barfleur to supply the crew and his guests. They were there to celebrate, weren't they? Well, much drinking commenced. Of the almost 300 people on board, all soon became completely drunk. Time passed quickly. But at last, the tide shifted again, and it was the White Ship's turn to leave the harbor. It was around midnight when they finally set out. Egged on by alcohol and ego, the crew rocketed out of the harbor, pulling hard at their oars as all sought to overtake the king's ship some hours away. But then, almost immediately out of the harbor, the ship struck a rock. This rock was well known to the captain, but being as drunk as the rest of the crew, he had not navigated around it successfully. The vessel quickly capsized. In an age where few people knew how to swim, many of the passengers drowned. Those who didn't quickly froze to death in the chilly November waters. At first, it seemed like total catastrophe would be averted when the ship's sole lifeboat was quickly taken by William Aetherling's bodyguards to bring their charge to safety. Bundling the prince in almost as soon as the wreck occurred, they managed to pull away. As they rowed to safety, though, William heard the cries of his sister in the water, who shamed him into ordering the guards to return to rescue her. In an episode that illustrated why the officers of Titanic's lifeboats feared to return to rescue those in the water, as soon as William's boat returned, it was swamped by desperate passengers. All quickly drowned. Of the 300 people on board, the only survivor was a butcher who had boarded to collect on a debt owed to him by a stingy nobleman. The prince and all of his friends, many of whom were prominent leaders in England, had perished. Henry I was devastated upon hearing the news. For not only had he lost many of his own friends, but he had also lost his teenage son, who he had groomed all his life in preparation for inheriting the realm. Now, there was no one. To leave a kingdom without a king to rule it was to fail at a ruler's first duty. It was the only guarantee that his life's work would survive him. When Henry died some years later, his worst fears came true. A 15-year succession war broke out between his daughter Matilda, the nominal heir, and Stephen, Henry's most popular nephew. The carefully crafted prosperity of Henry was gone. The war tore England and Normandy apart so thoroughly that the period became known as the anarchy, a time in which no man ruled. Crops of farmers were stolen to feed the armies of the two sides, and unpaid mercenaries roved the land, torching anything they could not carry away. Eventually, though, Henry I's grandson, the aptly named Henry II, restored order. But it's amazing that for a decade and a half, a country tore itself apart because of the sinking of a luxury ship. All because the wrong people had died. So, perhaps World War I didn't break out because the Titanic sank. But perhaps, if the wrong people hadn't died, it could have been averted? Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm trying to get a history story out every week now, so if you like to hear these tidbits, please subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you would have done if you were William Aetherling in that lifeboat.